What's going on, guys? It's Jake with Black Ops. Today we're going to be showing you how to install the rack support for your CanAm X3. Let's get started.
The first step of your installation is to jack up the vehicle and place a jack stand underneath. Next, remove both front tires. With the front tires removed, lower the car until it is secure on the jack stand. Using an 18mm socket and wrench, remove the lower shock bolt and tie it out of the way. Next, using an 18mm socket, separate the link from the sway bar. Now you can snip the zip tie holding the steering column boot. From inside the vehicle, behind the pedals, remove the 4 push pins holding on the boot. Behind the pedals, remove the 3 nuts holding on the steering rack bolts. This is done using a 19mm socket. Now you can slide the boot up out of the way. On the passenger side, remove the 2 18mm bolts holding on the rack. Now remove the strap and the saddle. Back on the driver's side, remove the tie rod bolt cotter pin. Next, remove the tie rod bolt and the tie rod itself. Repeat these steps on the opposite side. Using a 13mm wrench, remove the steering rack U-joint bolt. Next, using a ton of patience, wiggle the steering box so you can remove the 3 long bolts. You're going to have to cycle the suspension, moving the A-arm up and down until you can get the bolts clear. This will take some time. Now remove the steering rack and place it on the bench. Using a 19mm socket, remove the 2 bolts holding the tie rods to the rack. Using the factory bolts you just removed, install the Black Ops machine bushing retainer. Torque these bolts to 65 foot-pounds. Make sure the flats of the bolt heads are lined up so you can install the bushing. You may need to lightly tap with a hammer. Next, install the Black Ops machine rack support onto the bushing as shown. Make sure when you install the rack support to reuse the factory strap. Now, remove the rack support so you can reinstall the rack back into the vehicle. Next, reinstall the column U-joint onto the rack, lining both yellow lines up. Next, reinstall the rack U-joint bolt, followed by the nut on the back side. This may take a little bit of wiggling to accomplish. Back on the passenger side, reinstall the saddle, followed by the strap. Use 1 bolt to hold the rack in place while you slide the rack support in. Next, reinstall the lower factory rack bolt, followed by the 2 supplied rack support bolts. Again, this may take some wiggling to accomplish. Back on the passenger side, slide the strap underneath the rack support and insert the factory lower bolt. Next, separate the link from the sway bar to make room to install the upper rack support bolt. Place the nuts on the backside, leaving them loose at this time. Back on the driver's side, slide the rack bolts the rest of the way in, placing the nuts on the backside. Now you can reinstall the 4 push pins holding on the steering column boot. Using a 19mm socket, tighten all 5 of the rack bolts. With the rack tightened down, turn your steering wheel back and forth to see what resistance it has. On the passenger side, loosen the 2 rack support bolts. With the passenger side loose, check the steering to see if the resistance has changed. If the resistance is less, you need to add shims. However, if it is not less, you don't need to add any shims. In this case, the resistance was less, and we needed to add shims to our vehicle. Every vehicle varies, and you will need to find the correct combination to fill your gap. Once you have the correct combination, you can now tighten both your passenger rack bolts. Once the rack is tight, cycle your steering again to make sure it feels correct. Next, reinstall the link on the sway bar and tighten down. Reinstall the tie rod, tighten it down, and don't forget your cotter pin. Reinstall the driver's side sway bar link and tighten down. Next, reinstall the tie rod, tighten it down, and don't forget your cotter pin. Now you can reinstall the lower shock bolt and tighten down. Jack the front of the vehicle up, reinstall the front tires, and your install is complete.
We hope this video helped you with the installation of our rack support for your CanAm X3. For more information, please visit us at blackopsmachine.com.